Aloha Maui Nui. Hey, this is Josh Porter.
And Jason Verkart, the official social media correspondent for SPI 2019.
Congratulations, Jay. So happy for you.
Congratulations, Josh.
And we're here. We also have Brian Thomas here, independent owner-manager of Fairwinds Wealth Management.
Gentlemen, good to be here.
Nice to have you, Brian. Thanks for jumping in again. Really getting excited to have, this kind of constant conversation about the financial world as it relates to renewable energies. I think that's a really good area for us to focus on. Brian's helping us out with that, so it's awesome to have you again.
Thank you.
We're going to jump into a really cool show today, Jay. Episode 123. I said it. I gave you the number. Deal with it. This is Gary Dolberg of Perfectly Clear. And it's an Enduro Shield is the company. I guess that's the technology behind it. It's really interesting. We're talking about coatings on solar panels, basically.
This is something we really haven't touched on at all. There's this longevity conversation. You want to have your solar functioning at maximum generative capacity for its entire lifespan, which can be multi-decades. I mean, the warranties are 10 years plus, but you can get 20, 30 years out of these things if you take care of them. And we've talked a little bit about washing them. In fact, we've heard everything from getting out there with little robots to just turn on the fire hose. but this is a little different, where you actually have a coating for them that will help mitigate soil and build up on the panel, which effectively makes it generate better over its lifetime. So is it real? Let's find out.
Let's find out. I have talked to people over the years with this, Jay. I was just telling you, I ran into some researchers, 5 or 6 years ago, that were working on different coatings, and they, big time, PhD chemist kind of guys that were coming up with ideas. But this is something that's commercially viable. It's out there. It's in other markets, and it's being applied to the solar panel or solar industry and on solar panels, as I understand it. But we'll hear all the details from Gary shortly, and that should be really fun, because I don't know how it's possible we haven't dealt with that yet. So, yeah, right? Let's jump over to our housekeeping. What do you say, Jay?
Let's do this.
Alrighty, folks. This is the Solar Coaster. We are a renewable energy themed talk show right here in lovely Maui County. Can be found Fridays at 1:05 p.m. on Kauai 1110 a.m. Also 96.7 FM Central Maui, 96.5 FM Westside, 98.7 FM Upcountry.
www.solar-coaster.com is where you can listen live, stream all our old shows. You can now see our nice flashy new logo, which is very high tech and says a little bit more about the geeky stuff that we do, is all over. I can no longer say the little yellow SC logo.
Oh no.
But it's up there. You'll learn to recognize us again, and of course, if you're already subscribed to any of the channels, you'll find us easy, because none of that's actually changed. iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn also all carry the Solar Coaster. You look for that little circle SC waveform logo, and you'll be able to take us everywhere you go.
There you go. Got some great sponsors: Sundrum Solar, Pantech Design, LG Chem. Looking forward to connecting in with these fellas, ladies as well, at SPI, learning about some of their announcements and new things they're doing. I know LG Chem and LGE are working together more closely, right? It's not embargoed or anything like that. Pantech is at CEDIA, or one of the big trade shows just before SPI. And then, of course, Sundrum's doing a lot of cool stuff. I think Sundrum and Thermal is really going to take off. So, hey, folks, this is a call-in show, 808-242-7800. It's the call-in line. If you'd like to get a question in, leave it for us on our, I suppose we got an answering machine there somewhere, and then we'll get to it. Let's jump over to our Pantech Design Minute. Welcome to the Pantech Design Minute. Today's topic, smart HVAC controls.
One of the largest consumers of electricity in the average home is air conditioning. How to use your climate control systems in the most efficient way, though, is not always obvious.
When no one is home, the normal thing to do is to turn off the air conditioning. But heat is energy, and cooling is just taking away that energy. That's what an air conditioner really does. It just moves the heat out of your home.
If you turn off the AC during the day, your house gets hot. And when you come home from work, your air conditioning needs to work extra hard to move all that energy back outside again. For most folks, this is unfortunately when the sun is just going down, and you won't be producing any more energy from your solar system.
So your AC will either drain your home battery, or you'll need to buy power from the grid in order to run that AC at that time of day.
Your solar system has charged your home battery already after a few hours of sunshine, but after completing the charge, it either exports at a reduced rate, or in the case of a CSS system, just shuts off because there's nowhere to put the energy.
So, knowing all this, what can we do? What if there was a system that knew when your battery was full and could automatically use your excess solar energy for something something useful. Pantech's Adapt system can do just that.
Adapt will intelligently monitor your energy production, weather reports in your area, and the health of your home battery, and make the appropriate choices automatically so you don't have to.
Your electric bill goes down, and your house is already cool when you get home.
This has been the Pantech Design Minute.
Pantech Design is an awesome company, and they're just amazing people. I really appreciate them on so many levels. Troy Morgan, of course, Megan as well, and just a team of people that are real problem solvers.
You got a little something on your nose, Josh.
What are you talking? This guy. Oh, no.
Seriously though, that air conditioner conversation it can be a game changer for folks. The utility's talking right now about giving people a reduced rate for EV charging during the day when solar's running. If you run your air conditioner during the day when the solar's running, I mean it's cheaper and or free energy that would be lost otherwise, and it just makes sense to run it that way if we can kind of change our lifestyle, and the Adapt system will help you do that kind of automatically, so you don't have to think about it.
There you go. And that's never happened before, and we have some announcements coming in from SPI, so we'll probably do a show with them, or at least 30 minutes, and get a handle on the new advancements that they've been making. So looking forward
version 2.
Yeah, okay, great. News and events time, Jay.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about electrification of air transport recently. I mean, we all talked about electric vehicles for a long time, and now we're talking about airplanes, air travel. They're all still very small aircraft, the local regional things. But a new company, Zero Avia, kind of just popped up, and they it's kind of unique. They have a reasonably mid-sized plane, 10 to 20 passengers, and will be up to 500 miles, which is longer than any of the battery-powered electrics. And the reason why this is because they're using hydrogen.
Right.
Just burning hydrogen. Thoughts on hydrogen?
Boom. No.
No, that's wrong. Okay, that's the wrong thought. Yes, we did have a hydrogen. Oh, I can't say gas station. What do you want to call these things? Hydrogen refueling station. Mm-hmm. It seems entirely too long. Accident in Northern Europe at one point. It actually caused a halt of some of the Toyota hydrogen-powered vehicles in the just kind of a pause in sales of those vehicles. But talking about using hydrogen for aircraft actually really makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is an industry that has massive amounts of oversight, massive amounts of security, regulations and processes up the proverbial wazoo, I suppose. But it just makes sense that they'd be able to leverage this. And you're already starting to see so many airports because they have so much land around them, to putting up extra solar farms. So they can literally take that solar, turn it into hydrogen, and then put it in the aircraft. And I think this makes a lot of sense. But the coolest thing is that they're taking that hydrogen and using it on the aircraft gets them a much better range than the battery alone.
Well, this is kind of how it fits into the conversation, in my view. You have these all-electric airplanes that are coming out, like the E-Flyer, the 2-seater and the 4-seater, and that's got a certain amount of range and a certain capability and a certain use case. And then you have these hybrids like the Ampere, where they're retrofitting the 337, 2 shows that we've done so far. And then now we've got something that's even further range, just like you were saying, bigger payload, further range, and it's a full hydrogen, basically changing out the engine, or I suppose the overall fuel system for hydrogen. Now, I have a question. Maybe it's a silly question, but how do you transport hydrogen, and how is it stored, and is it light?
There are, not really. There are 2 ways you can do it. One is just compressed, and one is liquefied. So you see a liquefied hydrogen. Liquefied hydrogen takes a lot more equipment to both pressurize and manufacture, and then storage equipment on the vehicle needs to be also beefed up to contain that. But they have been making tanks out of carbon fiber materials, carbon capture. Hooray for that! But it does take more, and of course it's heavy. Once you liquefy it, imagine carrying around big tanks of water.
I think Brian wants to jump in.
Well, and just to bring back the George By conversation when you guys had about the electric aircraft, like those are going to probably be concurrent developments. In other words, the hydrogen is maybe longer range, and then George has the trainer aircraft. And You know, what was interesting about that, as I looked into that more, Siemens is developing the engine technology. So
Right.
it's not like George himself is doing the engine technology, and there's other airlines that are doing it. So to have a huge partner like Siemens coming out doing that, it's like General Electric with aircraft engines. I mean, you know, Boeing doesn't develop the engines;
Right.
they outsource that stuff,
So-
and that's going on in the electric aircraft industry too.
This kind of says that this is a serious shift in technology, right?
And they've been at it for a little while actually.
right,
So,
right. Very
Yep.
cool. Well, I'm
Rolls-Royce is doing it as well, so which is another huge name in aircraft engines.
very good. Let's keep going, guys. I want to jump into national news and I'll talk a little bit here, very briefly, Jason, if we may, about Energy Toolbase. Now, we were actually scheduled to have Matt Chimo from Energy Toolbase on today, but we had a scheduling conflict, and that was resolved yesterday. We're going to be doing the show in the upcoming week. And interestingly enough, this morning, I think my spidey senses were tingling because Payson Power acquired Energy Toolbase yesterday, I believe. Yes. So everything is centered here in the solar coaster, at least I believe that. So this is interesting. I did text Matt and I asked him a little bit, and he was laughing and he said, yeah, this is pretty big, brother. So he's excited to sit down and talk with us. He's getting all the information together. We're going to hear the inside scoop to the pulse, straight to the second of when it's happening. We should be able to hear that from Matt probably next Wednesday or Thursday. Very cool stuff. But this is just, as I saw this, I know Payson Power, don't know too much about these guys, other than it's almost like a string of M&A action in this industry. We've got Royal Dutch Shell buying Sonnen. We've got Generac buying Pika. We've got Payson Power buying Energy Toolbase. And can I just say that all those guys have been on our show a number of times.
There you
We're
go.
very close with those fellas because they're awesome.
So, trivia question: since 2002 to 17, how many deals have Big
love this
Oil?
question.
Like Big Oil sees the value of it, right? And they don't want to be left behind, and they have
Okay.
money to invest. So
In total, all Big Oil.
yeah. Well, Big Oil. But how many deals do you think they've done since 02 to 17?
Oh, geez. I'm going to say in the dozens.
109.
Whoa.
And that's
Yeah,
109.
more than that.
Yeah, that's according to the Solstice site,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's since 2017. And they've done more, accelerated that development in
Wow.
the last couple of years.
That's an awesome piece of info. Thank you for that. That is really, really cool. Jay, anything to add here, buddy?
Well, I did look. I also wasn't familiar with Payson Power. I kind of wanted to figure out who they are. They're actually wholly owned under Payson Systems. It's a Canadian-based company, and they own a lot of stuff across the entire. It's North America in its entirety, but a lot of Canadian. Upwards of 65% of oil drilling rigs across North America have Payson Systems equipment on board, and the Payson Power section here, which is owned a majority share of Energy Toolbase and now acquired them, it actually has a whole suite of systems for controlling your energy system, your energy grid, if you are a grid operator. So they're massive. They're massively integrated.
So
across
they
everything,
already
and-
have software in place that's a grid operator control software. Is that what you just said?
Correct.
I see. This it starts to make a little sense. So it's Energy Toolbase is a very interesting design modeling software that we've used over the years and spoke to these fellows a couple of different times on air. Basically, what you can do is they've always kind of been at the forefront, even like battery modeling showing return on investment.
Yeah, nobody knew what to do.
Nobody knew how to do it. Toolbase came out early with it, and we were like, "Whoa, that's like an effective model of these kind of wonky spreadsheets that we're all chucking around the world trying to figure out how to make it work."
And
right?
why you need to explain why you would want that. And the issue is basically to show you how long it's going to take for you to recoup your investment, and then what kind of profit revenue you can expect out of it. So that's what they specialize in, is giving you a consolidated report that tells you, if I buy this many panels and this many batteries, how long is it going to take me to pay off, how much energy I can generate. And they had reams of data for how much sun you'd get in a particular location and how much that would cost to install it in a particular location.
Pretty good
and what
stuff.
kind of rack.
Pretty good
and
stuff,
you would put it all in, and it just chucks out a number. It says, okay, it's your payback
Brian's thinking about something there. What do you think about Brian?
So is that standardized across the industry?
You mean are those metrics kind of accepted?
Yeah, like in other words, if you've got two competitors, but they're using their own software to model, they're going to make it skew to their side. But if it's used across the industry, then that's
they're
pretty
independent.
Okay. Okay.
So they're independent of
They're
technology.
not actually the equipment
That's
manufacturers.
right.
Sure.
But there are other modeling systems like Solar Nexus, for example, and Energy Toolbase
Mm-hmm.
do similar things. They were both kind of pushing the limits in having the capability to interpret battery data in self-supply kind of functionalities.
Gotcha.
And but Energy Toolbase did say, hey, it was a pretty sweet tool pretty early on, and we were super jazzed about it. So I'm not surprised, and it's not easy to do. You
Yeah,
know,
and,
it's
and
like-
it's not coming from the manufacturer. Like, in other words,
no, but data comes like they'll take a spec sheet on
Yeah.
a battery,
Gotcha.
and then they'll take whatever those specs are. Okay, this is your lifespan, this is your degradation, this is your power, and they'll have all those inputs
Warranty.
go into it. Warranty.
There's so many
everything,
variables.
Throughput. Yeah, it's really deep, and it's really even at the edge of that. When we saw it last, I was going, it's getting close, but it's hard for it to be there. Not just specific to them, for the other groups that were doing it as well. So very cool. We're going to hear the whole story about Pace and Power, formerly known as Energy Toolbase. I wonder if they'll keep the name. Probably, maybe they will. And shortly. So we've got a couple more minutes. We do have to jump into Hawaii. Jay, you want to pick a couple of these Hawaii ones?
Residential solar plus storage is taking over Hawaii's grid. This is the Sunrun Brightbox story.
Oh, yeah.
Recently, we saw the RFP come down from the phase 2 from the PUC and what HECO companies collectively. I'm still getting
There
used
you go,
to
HECO
how they
companies.
want to call them. Yeah, how they want to call themselves. There's a lovely sentence in this PV Magazine article. It says, in March of this year, the OATI and HECO, HECO, signed a GSPA and submitted to PUC. There's so many acronyms in this one sentence. We have to figure out who all these people are. But OATI is Open Access Technology International. This is a company that supplies information and
This is a scheduling coordinator for mainland grid
scheduling
markets.
coordinator, right? Yeah. For that, obviously the PUC, we know who they are. HECO is the utility. A GSPA is a grid services purchase agreement. And when I read that was it's on now, because the grid services are the things we've been talking about previously: demand response, frequency stabilization, and all these cool things you can do once you have a massive distributed system of home batteries, like what we saw in Europe. There are still very few of these types of installations across the United States. I think you can count them on one hand right now. There were a couple more recent ones. They just struck a deal with the folks in Massachusetts for a 20 megawatt installation. There was another one, I don't remember where it was recently, but where we fall squarely. This is for Oahu, by the way.
So let's talk.
But
Let's think about this from the perspective of the client. I think what's interesting here is that you have this grid services discussion. You have Sunrun kind of joining this technical this partnership to be able to provide this service to the utility. But what happens to the people, like the actual homes that have that? And what is the technology? Is it LG Chem? We're talking about Brightbox, and I think LG
there
Chem
is
the
picture
dominant
of
tech,
LG.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and LG Chem is a sponsor and full disclosure of the solar coaster. And what's interesting down here, this is a Brightbox, the type of technology. It looks like they're going to be able to. They have some dollar figures here. And this is what interests people, right? Of course, Jay, you have the ability to save some extra money. So participating customers will be able to reduce their $25 per month minimum bill charged. And then what else is there?
There's a $125 to $150 per year bonus for subscribing to the programming and making your battery available to the utility for emergency use and grid services use. Honestly, that number seems a little low to me.
Well, if you think of it, let's say they were able to
That's kind of the conversation is how valuable are these grid services? We really don't know. I was under the impression from our conversations with someone in Europe that they're extremely valuable. Some of these people don't pay for any electricity at all, and they don't even have any solar on their house.
I think the Europeans are a little more forthcoming with that information.
for sure. But I mean, is it more forthcoming because they just don't care to hide it, or does the value really not translate?
Now, so from
That's
the
the
layman, is that where the utility says, okay, we want to be able to control the grid a little bit and call on this power on demand when we need it?
Yeah. Basically, you've got a solar system, you've got a battery, and then the utility wants to have access to those assets to be able to create. There's something called value stacking, right? So there's different types of values that can provide to the grid. right? So, and this is set up by contracts, and Sunrun went about setting up this contract in partnership with this OATI. And I think I've met some of these fellows poking around Maui before too. So it'll be interesting to shake that tree a little bit, see what we can come out with, Jay. I bet you we can get them on air and then really learn about
Absolutely.
where this is at and how they're quantifying it, and valuing it. That'll be really interesting. I think we got maybe another minute or so if you want to jump on one more, and then we got to jump over to our guest.
All right. Well, there's one Civil Beat article that I want to touch on. And the title is a little inflammatory, of course. Will Hawaii Electric customers ever save any money with renewable energy?
I love it.
Thoughts? Right now, it's really, really difficult to say. They're in the throes of this massive overhaul of the way the PUC rewards utility performance. Traditionally, it's been the utility has to invest money in infrastructure and generation. So they make power plants, they make lines, they connect us all together to their grid, and they generate the big power plants, and then they feed us power, and they set a rate for it, and they're allowed to make a percentage worth of profit. The world has changed already, and we're kind of we're playing catch up in this way. The PUC is now trying to negotiate a rewards for performance model. So instead of the utility being able to make a profit over how much money they invested in infrastructure over the year, they would be rewarded for making 50% renewable energy by a certain year, or whatever we set the rewards to be. Keeping the grid actually stable would be nice. Those types of things. Realistically, I don't see. I mean, even as it sits now, even if we got this plan, and right now the proposal from the PUC was 100 pages. The counter proposal from the utility was 180 pages long. These are not small documents for this agreement, and it's really, really hard to sift through. But even if we went out there today and passed one of these agreements, I really don't think we would see prices coming down until we get almost all the fossil fuels off the grid, and
so
that's still 20 years out.
There's a couple of little metaphors here that I thought were useful, right? It says in Hawaii, this is the Ulupono Initiative, Murray Clay speaking. In Hawaii, state law requires the utilities to face penalties if they don't meet deadlines for adopting renewables. But there's no positive incentive, said Murray Clay, president of Ulupono Initiative. Clay likened the situation to having a landscaper who gets paid for trimming hedges but not cutting grass. Naturally, the grass could get overgrown since there's not much incentive to cut it. But it's not the landscaper's fault, he said. It's your fault for paying for only trimming the hedge. So, he's talking about putting up the correct incentives to make sure this thing gets done and make sure people end up, we get our renewables, we start saving some money. But we have, it remains to be seen. The answer to this is Honolulu Civil Beat. This was put out on 9, just the other day, right? Like September 10th, 2019. To answer this question, though, one of the things that we did hear recently on one of our shows was with Doug McLeod, actually, and he said that the RFPs, they have no accelerators and no increasing costs of energy over the terms, and they should, if you believe that the cost of oil will continue to increase, they should provide savings, and that should guarantee savings. I think was pretty much.
Well, it's already guaranteeing savings because we're well under. I mean, we pay 33% on Oahu, 36% on Maui, as far as I know, and it's a lot. That's well above the national average of 13 cents, and the reason why is because we have to pay for that oil to come in and the cost of labor and materials to make the grid function here.
Very good.
It's not an easy job.
No,
but these new RFPs are all coming in at sub 10 cents, under 10 cents. So if the utility can buy the power, not have to build any, there's no capital outlay for them. They're buying the power from a third party.
There you go. We'll leave it on that note. So we're going to go to our commercial break, and we'll come right back with Gary Dolberg of Perfectly Clear to learn all about solar panel coating. LG is a leader in the home electronics industry and manufactures some of the most popular PV panels, as well as many other appliances we've come to know and appreciate over the years. The same LG brand offers the LG Chem Resu battery line for your home energy storage needs. Here in Hawaii, their primary model is the LG 10H Resu with 9.3 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. capacity. The LG 10H Resu can be used both to maximize consumption of solar energy at home and also functions as a source of backup power in the event that the grid goes down. LG Chem has increased production of their battery line for Hawaii's renewable energy solar market. Contact your local solar provider to learn more about the LG Chem 10H Resu battery.
Sundrum Solar is the manufacturer of a revolutionary thermal collector that fits on the underside of your standard PV panel to maximize energy capture per square foot. The Sundrum Solar Hybrid PVT system, combined photovoltaic and thermal, holds the world record for peak efficiency, capturing an astounding 86% usable energy. Learn how Sundrum Solar vastly improves electric, heating, and cooling economics at sundrumsolar.com.
Pantech Design is ushering the world into a new age of home energy automation through the convergence of smart home technologies and renewable energy management. Unifying solar energy production, intelligent energy storage, and smart breaker technologies with smart home devices, Pantech Design's complete home energy automation suite incorporates unprecedented control of lighting, shades, climate, security, hot water, electric vehicle charging, and many other systems. Contact Pantech today at pantechdesign.com. Okay, those were our wonderful sponsors. Thanks so much to you guys for keeping the solar coaster on the tracks. We are here with Mr. Gary Dolberg of Perfectly Clear. Gary, can you hear us okay?
I can indeed. Aloha.
Aloha, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. We have Brian Thomas is in the room. Jason's virtual present device. What do I call that? Virtually bringing him in. I don't know. There's a creative term there, but we're excited. We're excited to speak with you, Gary. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to chat with us. You've got a really interesting product here, and Jay and I were just kind of joking about it, saying how on earth haven't we handled coatings in the last 2.5, almost 3 years yet? So we're excited to talk a little bit about your product area.
And from an advertising standpoint, I'm kind of glad you haven't. Let me be the first.
There you go.
I think that would help a lot. So a little background. Originally Californian, spent 30 years in information technology, Jay. And it was, in fact, IT that moved me to Hawaii back in the 80s. And after spending a decade on Oahu, I did relocate back to Arizona for a while. And then I finally decided to pivot and change course. Got my Hawaii real estate license and moved to Maui 15 years ago and began a career in the real estate industry, which I am still in on a part-time basis. But in 2012, I formed my company, which is Perfectly Clear. And Perfectly Clear is a service provider. The product that we provide and use exclusively is EnduraShield. Every Perfectly Clear staff member is an EnduraShield professional certified applicator and restoration specialist. So my company has been in business for near 7 years, a little over actually. And our primary source of business has been the restoration of stained, etched, damaged glass, example, showers, shower screens, view windows, actually anything that's made of glass. We have the capability of restoring it back to new condition and then applying the EnduraShield coating to protect it from any future staining, okay? So that's basically what we've been doing for most of the last 7 years. We have locations here in Hawaii and also in Arizona currently. And we have recently expanded that a little in our reach into the California market as well. So that gives you an idea what we do. The solar industry has become pinnacle in our focus because of the opportunity and the mere fact that really there's no one out there that's providing this type of service in this market, which is something that we want to be a whole part of. Okay, so to talk a little bit about EnduraShield. It's an Australian company. Product is manufactured exclusively in Australia. Came to market in 2005, and it's been in North America since 2008. And to give you an idea of scope, EnduraShield has been used, or is being used, to apply to the surface of glass shower enclosures in North America at a rate of approximately 10,000 showers per month right now. So it's mainly done by the glass and shower manufacturers, the temperers and the rest of them. And then there are those people like me, perfectly clear, who is the in-field applicator for the same product and with the same results and warranties, et cetera.
So Gary, I'm going to jump in for a moment,
Go
if
ahead.
you don't mind. So, okay, we got a sense of EnduraShield, and I suspect there's some IP behind that makes it kind of the protected market that can go after this, and then you're out here doing it in the field or in certain regions. What do you see? How do you see it working in the solar industry specifically? And more importantly, I kind of want to know, did you see the solar industry being an application of this back in 2012 you started the company?
I did. It's funny because the company, EnduraShield, was not focused on the solar market, but has since come around to realizing that this is a huge opportunity, and it's now seen on the EnduraShield.com website, as well as my own. And so they are pursuing it wholeheartedly. It is currently not a product that is being applied at the factory as it would be, for example, the shower screen.
Right.
But I see that is changing in the not too distant future as some of these manufacturers of the PV panels get hold of the idea that they can add an enhancement to their panels, maybe give them a leg up in the industry, and for the reasons that EnduraShield does what it does, the anti-soiling capability.
The thing that's interesting about it, Gary, is that when you start to look, panel manufacturing it's an extremely competitive business. There's these, a couple of different there's a handful of different technical tracks for sure in terms of increase efficiencies, increase longevity, but they're all shooting for a similar goal. It comes down to kilowatt hours, right? So
Right.
and I'm sure they're all working on every little angle. We've had tooling manufacturers on, we've had a whole bunch of different PV guys on talking about, half cut cells, which is like when they have the cell is cut in half so it reduces resistance, you get more energy. Or someone that, is making a bigger cell, so you reduce the back sheet, get more energy, or you go from poly to mono, or you go from all these different bifacials, one of our favorite topics, right? So you get all these
Right.
different things happening. Now there's this potential coating, right? And what I find interesting about it is if it's protected in such, because all these guys are working on that stuff, right? So you may have a real great opportunity if it's protected by international patent laws to be able to go in there, create a partnership. These guys, from what in my view, these guys are all looking for that extra edge at all costs, So they could be a
Right,
wonderful
right.
opportunity at the manufacturing level. That just seems pretty clear to
And
me.
I see that. I see that as an opportunity, huge opportunity for the manufacturer, EnduraShield. And when it comes to market via one of the manufacturers or more than one, that will even do something for my business. Granted, it takes away a business opportunity for me because if someone's buying a coated panel, then it's not my market.
Well, let's talk
But
about
it will do a lot for me.
Yeah, let's talk about what it does. Okay, Brian just goes like, "Hey, what does this stuff do?" So
Okay, so EnduraShield anti-soiling coating. It acts as a permanent shield. It seals the porosity of the glass, allowing the contaminants, which are still going to happen, to reside on top of an easy-to-clean protective coating. Okay, this stuff, once applied, is only 2 molecules thick, so you couldn't even see it with a microscope. But it completely adheres to the glass surface and provides protection that is both hydrophobic and oleophobic. So, in layman's terms, water repellent and oil-based repellent for all staining. It also allows UV light to pass through it with no interference, so it ensures maximum performance of the panels is always being maintained. So bottom line is it keeps the panel cleaner longer, and reduces the amount of maintenance necessary to keep the panel clean thereby. And when you do clean it, it is much easier to clean. It eliminates the need for harsh and toxic chemical cleaners and minimizes water usage at the same time.
So there's a lot of opportunity in that. And then, of course, when we're talking about anytime we interact with a panel, then there's the conversation about warranties. I mean, are we in a position where we can, coat this on a panel and know that it's not going to have any impact on the manufacturer's warranties?
So here's how we have to, at this point at least, and until we're adopted by one of the manufacturers. Not that we haven't put some energy as a company into getting these guys to give us a legal blessing to use our product, but if you would instead consider EnduraShield coating as a PV maintenance item long term. They don't regulate or dictate what soap you use to clean your panel.
Gotcha.
And frankly, once the coating is applied, let's say that something were to go wrong with a given panel, as happens, they could take that panel and send it back to the manufacturer and examine it, even with a microscope, and not know that it has an EnduraShield coating on it. It does not interfere with not only the transparency, but any of the electronics involved in the operation of the panel.
Gotcha. Okay,
So as a long-term cleaning product solution, it literally could be considered as no different than the choice of soap that you use.
An interesting way to look at it. So here's a thing that I see here, and Jay and Brian jump in at any time. But when we think about solar panels, let's say you're a homeowner and you've got a system, and I know retrofit isn't necessarily your ideal business. Maybe it's more working with installers, pre-installation for some obvious reasons and some not so obvious reasons, But let's say it comes down to the value proposition that a client, a homeowner, a solar system owner would be able to determine and then say, yeah, that makes sense for me. So what I'm hearing here, and as a person that's that maybe could be like a client example, is that you don't have to wash it as much because there's not going to be as much soil accretion, right? That's actually it's a highly relevant thing, and for the design folks out there we know that there is literally a field in the design of the system for a percentage called soil duration, and that's a metric that we use for predicting the overall energy production of the system over time. And usually that's about 2% of production, anywhere between. I mean, that's the last time I saw it anyway. Who knows what it is nowadays? But the bottom line is that if you can mitigate that, that's a straight savings. That's more energy produced. That's fantastic, right? And then of course you have the issue of getting someone on your roof. If I don't know if you've tried this, there's a couple guys out there cleaning solar panels. First of all, you should never get on your own roof, clean your own solar panels. Dangerous. Roofs are dangerous, right? But when you're trying to get someone out there to do it, it's not always easy. And I've had clients and friends trying to get people out there. It's a tough thing to contract. There are people, we can recommend some of them. But the bottom line is, if you can keep someone off your roof, roofs, things happen on roofs. There's other ways of saying that, but it's nice to not have people on your roof as often as possible, and that's to not have them on a roof.
And it seems.
So let me address the question of retrofit versus installation time, because it's a big one. First, let me just say, for the record, we will do retrofit.
Okay.
However, here's a big but. We would prefer not to. And the reasons are, number one, once the panels have been installed, not only are they 10 to 20 feet in the air causing danger, but more importantly, they become contaminated starting day one.
I see.
Now, when I'm working on a shower restoration, I have tools to allow me to restore the surface of the glass back to new. I cannot use those tools on a solar panel. So, and it's because of the electronics immediately behind the glass. So for that reason, if I am to go to a retrofit application, I will do it, but it's going to mean that the owner of the solar is going to pay a professional panel cleaner to come in and do his best job to remove as much of the contamination as possible, and then I'm going to seal it as is. That's number one. So number two, it will increase the cost. We've already discussed hazards, but that increases the cost of not only the application, but the material, because once it's out in the air, our product is delivered in a liquid form, but it's in an alcohol float. So when you're outdoors, not only do you have to be in a shaded, cool environment, preferably, but the evaporation is almost immediate if you're in the sun. We won't apply the product if you're out in the sun. So it literally doubles or triples the amount of product needed to do the job. And it reduces the 10-year warranty that we provide for all new glass applications down to 5.
Okay, so maybe you're a nocturnal installation company. Let's. I think Brian.
Get out of my head.
I think Brian has something he wants to ask. Yeah.
No, I was going to say it's a good thing all the solar panels are on the shade. That just makes it easier to do.
Right.
Well,
and now there is one other large reason that we want to stay away from retrofit as much as possible. Again, the coating.
Sure.
If you do it day one with the project, the cost can be included with the project, initial costs, qualify for the long-term financing or whatever the deal is that's made, as well as the tax advantages, which would not apply to a retrofit application.
Oh, yeah, big difference, big difference.
So it seems pretty apparent that, you want to do it at the get-go. And then you kind of answered a question. You said 10-year warranty. My question was, how durable is it? And
Okay. So it does come when applied to new glass with a 10-year warranty, and even at the 10-year point, as certified by TUV, what's their name?
Rhineland?
Reinhardt.
Right.
Yeah. There is no degradation of the coating at the 10-year point. But the warranty period is 10 years, so it will last 10 years and beyond. If something were to happen to the coating, and when I say that, I mean someone were to foolishly and accidentally go out there with an abrasive, which can damage the substrate, then I can come out and fix it. So that's the good news. The bad news, good news is it can be repaired. You can reapply it to an area that's been damaged. But assuming that no one does anything foolish and just uses normal cleaning, which is standard soap, it does not require any special cleaning products, and it is a one-time application that never needs revitalization. You don't have to come back out and basically reapply it, as some of the products in our field require.
Gotcha. Hey, Gary, I want to jump. We got a few minutes left, and before we do wrap up, I want to ask you a little bit about the numbers here, because I find that really interesting. Let's assume it's not retrofit. I think we can put that off the table or for the momentarily. And then if we look at let's say it's it's a slight bump in cost at the pre-install level, right? You're buying the system, and then let's say it's a solar salesman sitting down and saying, "Hey, we can put on Perfectly Clear on the solar system or not," right? What do you think that looks like? I have a sense, because we talked and I threw some darts at a wall trying to guess on costs, and I can apply the tax credits and such. But what do you think that value proposition looks like? Are you able to speak to financial points? Do you have a sense of ROI?
Yeah, let me. First of all, the product itself is charged strictly by the square foot. The more square feet there are, the lower the price point on the product in DuraShield. Okay, every installation, even the smallest, the application of DuraShield, including a small amount of labor time, is going to be under $100 per panel. It ranges normally from about $60 to $80 a panel completely installed when it's, again, brand new, but it can be under $50 on a larger scale project. So you're usually looking at $60 to $80, let's call it $75 per panel. And if you had a 10-panel application or installation, that's $750 that you're adding. Your return on investment is difficult to qualify, but when you consider the maintenance savings, because it should cut your maintenance requires about in half, number one. The increased production of electricity, which can be up to 30% loss with dirty panels. It also eliminates, as I said, scrubbing with chemicals, and it uses less water. So all of that needs to be taken into account. But the two major factors are the maintenance savings. So You're not going to spend $500 to have somebody come out, make their visit and do their cleaning twice a year. Maybe it's now once a year. Or if you were a bigger install in a dirty or dustier area where it was 4 times a year, it's only now twice a year.
I got to tell
So
you,
you're
Gary,
literally eliminating.
those are some great points, and I think we should talk more and try to map that out a bit, because I think I could help a little bit in showing that, in terms of real world cleaning schedules, in terms of what should be happening, in terms of percentage energy typically lost. I've seen some really interesting stories, and I'd love to maybe even do a little experiment after hours. What do you say, Jay? You want to code a panel and put it side by side and play with it and see what we can do with this thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, Gary, I hope you'll take us up on that offer. It's been really great to get to know you and to understand more about your product line, and we'll certainly be talking more in the future. How can people reach out to you, and how do they get in touch with you if they're interested?
Okay, so the website, cleverly named, is perfectlyclear.glass. So you can go to the website, the phone number's there, the contact information, or you can call me directly, 808-280-9422.
Very good. There you go. That's Gary Dolberg of Perfectly Clear. I would reach out to him and get a better sense of what he's doing here, and we'll definitely do some fun after-hours stuff with that Enduro Shield Perfectly Clear panel. Can't wait. Thank you so much for your time today, Gary.
Josh, Jay, Brian, thank you so much.
All right. Aloha. Have a
Appreciate
great day. There you go. Our first panel coating conversation. Very good.
It's interesting too, because I would want to see sort of you get an idea of how after damp and dew comes, how much soil accumulates on a panel over a certain amount of time.
It's fascinating.
Like, in other words, show me sort of a visual over time, because I know that happens 2 panels.
Yeah, we
And
got to
then-
set it up.
Yeah, and then do the math on the decreased efficiency.
Why does this type of stuff excite me? It really is a little too geeky, I think. I'm like so
Well,
stoked.
and it comes down to a finance thing,
Yeah.
It's just simple. Like, does
You
it
can
pay
map
for
it out.
itself?
Yeah.
Is the ROI going to pay for
Well,
itself?
just on Jay, I mean, I jump in at any time here. We're going to want to jump over to do some finance momentarily. But Jay, was that kind of cool? It was kind of cool because you thought about 10 panels, $750 out of pocket,
It's kind of unique.
2/3 knocked off with
would
tax
very
credits.
much-
right?
Yeah,
Right.
that was not something that I had thought of before he mentioned it. I would like to see a manufacturer. I mean, my mind goes to do the panel manufacturers actually do anything to their glass, or does it literally just get shipped? And I've never heard anybody touting panel coatings before.
Well, there's a
from
couple of
the
things to
manufacturer.
consider. I can think right out of the gate. First of all, you've got dimpled coatings now dealing with refraction. It's only
There-
2
there's
molecules,
that, yeah.
but it's only Gary said it was only 2 molecules thick, which shouldn't make any difference. So I mean, we got to get. You know, who we got to get on. We got to ask. What's his name? Andre. The tooling.
Andre Richter,
Andre
yeah.
Richter of what's his company again? I can't remember his name.
Meyerberger.
Meyer-Burger. He does tooling manufacturing, especially for all kinds of different panels. Knows everything about panels. Like every sentence.
You would know that.
Every sentence that I try to say with him, I try to recap, and he goes, "Is that right?" And he's like, "No, Josh, that's wrong." Let me tell you again. So remember that Jay loved that guy because
Yeah, glass. I mean,
Yep.
glass, like I know glass a little bit, but like if you want to treat car glass, hydrofluoric acid gets it so the water sheets really clean off of it.
Oh, okay.
And it makes a dramatic difference,
right, because you
And
got
so-
your Prius operation going on, right?
Well, I have a couple of Priuses, but it's far from an operation. But also, like, cerium oxide can polish glass,
you
right?
go.
So when you talked about the porosity of glass, I mean, if you're not a glass geek, and I don't know if I am or not, but I know a little bit more about glass, but it's like glass does have a porosity to it. So if you can fill those holes, it will sheet the water off better, and therefore hopefully not accumulate dirt as much, and therefore make the panel more efficient.
Yes, we're going to talk to some PV guys about this at SPI, I'm sure. Okay, let's take a little time. We neglect to do our financing section in the beginning of the show, but we have some time now to do it. So, Brian, I'm all ears. We're excited to hear from you. Thank you for coming on. It's your 3rd time?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I first started, Josh had me on. We talked about what ETFs were, and it stands for Exchange Traded Fund. And think of a mutual fund that trades on the stock exchange. Way lower cost, way more tax efficient, trillions flowing into them. And I realized the value in the mid-90s, and I got into business in 1998, and they were apparent then. And so one specific example we talked about was ticker symbol TAN, which TAN is the solar ETF. And so Josh had the timely fortune of bringing me in. And that ETF, and this is a report that came out in August, but that was the number 1 ETF of all the ETFs in all the sectors of anything in the market. So that was pretty. It was up 60% year to date. It's since pulled back. Last show I was on, we talked about another renewable energy ETF, PBW, Paul Bravo Walter. And that's a renewable energy. So it's got some wind in it and stuff. And so that's another way to put some money to work, because as something that's up 60%, you've got to manage risk, and that's the solar growth is unequivocally going, and solar efficiency is continuing to come down, and solar prices have fallen 70% since 2010. So that's, and the deployments are picking up, and different reasons and such like that. So the TAN ETF, it's not a recommendation, and you do want to manage risk around it, but solar can continue, but that ETF may have some challenges as investors start to harvest profits or so. But if you look at some other PBW, it has some wind in it, and again, not a recommendation, but look at a chart of the two, and
so it's really, thank you for that. So it's really interesting to think that we started talking about this, and we were trying to get our head around, what's going on with the just participating in stocks in renewable energies. That was kind of our initial mindset, and then you came on and you introduced the concept of ETFs. You introduced the particular one, TAN. You said this is an example of one. After that first couple of shows, a couple of people came up to me and said, "Can you say it again? Can you give me a sense of?" There's clearly some hunger out there to understand this. And then, from our perspective as being in the industry, Jay and I constantly watch these things, and you got these mergers and acquisitions, but you also have companies that are tanking, and really hard to pick a winner in the renewable energy industry. So if you can get a basket like this, it seems like it makes a lot of sense.
100%. And you look at Enphase, which was up huge. Yeah. Well, that stock has pulled back dramatically too in the last couple of weeks or so. So these are squirrely animals, some of these companies, But then PBW, for example, has Terraform Power, just one. It has 37 holdings in that ETF. That's one of the holdings.
37 different companies?
Yeah, exactly. And in that one ETF. So it's like, rather than trying to pick the winner, which is difficult to do, and spread the money out and have all the commissions and trading costs or whatever to buy it, you can own that basket. And so Terraform Power, $3.5 billion company, pays 4.83% dividend. Solar and wind power generation. Next year's earnings are target to grow at 476%. So, it's priced a little rich, but rather than take all the example and risk on that one, you can spread it out among several.
So when you make these, how many of these different ETFs in renewables are you seeing? Are there half a dozen, a dozen, three?
There's, I would say 10 or so,
Okay.
but these are some of the bigger ones,
Right. And some are doing better than others, obviously.
Absolutely.
Right? So this TAN and this PBW are two of your picks out of those?
Yeah. And it's part of the ESG investing, environmental social governance, which is putting your money to work in things you believe in.
Very good, very good. Well, I learned a little bit more. We're going to keep that on the solar coaster, hopefully moving forward. Continue to learn about finance, renewable energies, ETFs. That is exciting stuff. So, Jay, this has been a heck of a show here, learning about coatings with Gary Dolberg. This is the Solar Coaster, folks. We are sponsored by LG Chem, Pantech Design, and Sundrum Solar. I really appreciate everyone's ears today. Have a wonderful weekend, and aloha Friday.
Thanks for coming.
Aloha.